Just a few years ago, Gina Loudon was a young, impressionable college student on her way to becoming the pride of her progressive college professors. Late one night, away from the supervision of the college faculty, in a freak accident, she was exposed to an overdose of common-sense conservatism. Since then, she has spent every waking moment unlearning everything she was programmed to believe during her college indoctrination. Join her in her re-education. This is the Dr. Gina Show.
You're coming into my house?
So y'all need to hide your kids, hide your wife.
Go get a real job.
Three-letter word, jobs. J-O-B-S.
The president and the first lady are kind of like the mom and the dad of the country. And when your dad says something, you listen.
They don't get a pass because they're young and stupid.
16 ounces is the maximum that they would be able to serve in one cup. If you want to order 2 cups at the same time, that's fine. It's your choice.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Where do they come up with this stuff?
This is the Dr. Gina Show.
I own the night and I don't need no help. Gotta be the bitterness, Scarface pill. Stuck it going wild, can't handle this pill. Back for the club, arrogant like yeah. Top like money, so the girls just mail. One too many, y'all know me like 12.
Welcome, welcome. Welcome to the Dr. Gina Show. Everything okay in there, Producer Jason? You're kind of dancing around. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sitting on my foot. Sorry about that. You know, sometimes we act naturally. Welcome to the Dr. Gina Show. It's good to be with you today. And lots to talk about today. Oh, my goodness, the hearings this morning. I think I was actually screaming at my television because the hearings were so on my very last nerves. You know, you hear these humble, this is what struck me, the difference in the spirit of the people. Does anybody pay attention to spirit anymore? Like just the way people act, the way people talk, the way people, like what position they hold themselves in. Does anybody besides me pay attention to that? I feel like if I were, I'm not even gonna glorify the guy with his own name, but I feel like if I were sitting there watching those patriots say the amazing, humble things they were saying, I would be embarrassed to then come in with my own spin. It was so obvious that these people meant what they said. They were almost all of them were choking back some sort of tears. And they were talking about how, you know, this was shoestring budgets, most of it funded with their own money. And here they are being targeted in ways that to me were just so
And these congressmen who are sitting there, the Democrat congressmen, who are asking them essentially trick questions to make them look dumb. Like
that's it, yeah. Well, and not only
like,
that, spinning it as if what they're doing is partisan. No, what they're doing isn't partisan. What the IRS did to them was partisan. How dare he then say, this isn't about blue states and red states. Seriously? Yes, it is all about blue states and red states, idiot. And I'm sorry. You know what? I understand respecting the office, but if you sit up there and defile the office, I'm going to call you on it every time. How dare that man sit there and accuse those giving their heartfelt testimony, who all they've tried to do is run an organization based on their First Amendment free speech rights, which, by the way, he should be respecting if he even knows what a constitution is. How dare he accuse them of spin and partisanship? I'm sorry. I just had to get that out. Go ahead.
Okay, no, I was right there with you, screaming, yelling. I'm going to have to get a prescription for my blood pressure now.
Yeah, I think me too. So proud, I have to throw it out, of the woman from the Wetumpka Tea Party. We've had her here on the show, Garrettson, Becky Garrettson, I think is her name. Just amazing. We need to get her back on the show to talk about her experience, although I'm sure she's in very high demand now. But I thought her testimony was one of the most powerful. What did you think, producer Jason?
Yeah, definitely when she was starting to get a little emotional. And this is an emotional thing. You're thinking about, imagine sitting there in the halls of Congress with the government of the so-called free world peering down upon you, all the cameras, and these guys are asking you these questions like, who do you think you are coming in and telling us that we're doing something wrong, and saying, I'm trying to exercise my rights, my God-given rights that the founders intended. And you think about what the founders would be thinking at this point in our history.
Yeah.
If they were here today.
Well,
and it is pretty an emotional thing.
It is. And for these people, you could tell, like, their sincerity was just, it was so out there. They were choking back tears thinking, oh, Lord, please don't let me cry on national television. Been there, done that. When you're so passionate about something and you so believe it, it penetrates you. And you could see that in their testimony. And then for that, well, I tweeted this. I said, Representative John Lewis, am I really hearing you accuse the victims here of being partisan? Not sure what you're saying, but wow, Lewis, I really couldn't understand much of what he was saying, actually. Well, I just won't even go there. He was difficult, very difficult to understand. I don't know. It could be that he's had a stroke or something. I don't know. But
that he's a total idiot. One or the other.
And then the way they were patronized by the committee members, I just thought it was improper. It was undignified. It was unprofessional the way those testifying were treated. I also found it very interesting that C-SPAN, neither C-SPAN channel was carrying the hearings. Really? They were carrying something about comedy or something? Are you kidding me? The only network I could find that was actually carrying the hearings was Fox News. Now, I wasn't super thorough, didn't go back through, and Fox News was going on and off. But I think that says a lot that C-SPAN, who supposedly has their ear to the ground in Washington, D.C., wasn't even carrying the hearings. Didn't you find that interesting?
C-SPAN has 12 different channels, so I don't know which ones you flipped through, but I don't know if it was airing on none of those. It may have been on C-SPAN 14.
Yeah, maybe.
Who knows?
I only think I have access to two of them, and they certainly weren't playing it there, which I found very interesting. I think it should have been on the most primary C-SPAN, don't you? I mean, seems to me. Anyway, lots of stories coming up on the show today. If you've done nothing wrong, you still need to worry, says my editor, Bob Enru at WorldNet Daily. Also, the IRS, it looks like, has been covering up for IRS and, by the way, DHS, Department of Homeland Security, it looks like have been excusing terror threats and threats of jihad on digital media while targeting Tea Party groups. Very interesting stories coming out there. More than one. This is not just about the IRS now. We're moving into other government agencies, including the DHS. Also, we told you yesterday about this story the AP is reporting on about these conferences that took place after the IRS found out it was in trouble. They paid quite a little sum of money to go entertain themselves and talk about the problems they're having. So now Media Matters has come out and said that there are 5 IRS controversy falsehoods that are being manufactured by the right-wing media. I've come up with a concept that it looks to me like this Media Matters coverage is so absolutely poorly written that it's impossible to read. I really feel that way. Today on the show, Jack Miner, we talked about him yesterday. He is the one who has not paid his taxes. I told you about this yesterday. Has not paid his taxes because the IRS will not respond to him about which taxes he owes from a constitutional perspective. He claims himself to be the most feared person by the IRS. And so we're going to talk to him today. Also, here on the Dr. Gina Show today, the UK, now under their form of socialized medicine, is targeting disabled folks for euthanasia as a cost-saving measure, coming soon to a country near you, thanks to my honorary associate producer, DJ, who told me about this story going way back. Baby boomers killing themselves at an alarming rate. We are going to talk about that today as well. There's just a lot going on. And one other guest we have today, one of my favorites, Bob Dorigo Jones. We've had him on the show before, talking to us about how you can absolutely tell in the most tangible terms ever that the United States government is just plumb crazy. He tells us about wacky warning labels here today on the Dr. Gina Show. He is funny and fun. So we're going to get a break from all the gravity around here, and we're going to talk to Bob Dorigo Jones. So you're going to want to stay tuned for that. All of this and more coming up from the Dr. Gina Show. You stay tuned.
God, guns, and gear. The things you need to be a proper conservative these days. Go to the Dr. Gina site at docgtv.com. That's docgtv.com for all of your Patriot gear, including concealed carry handbags, the best t-shirts you'll find anywhere, and even jewelry for that special woman in your life who enjoys her freedoms as well. docgtv.com, docgtv.com. Go there for your Patriot gear.
Would you rather be a gun owner or a victim? Hi, I'm Tim Macy from Gun Owners of America. Our Constitution affirms our right to self-defense, including the right to own firearms. Right now in Washington, D.C. and many states around the country, there are radical leftists who'd like to disarm Americans. That's why Gun Owners of America was formed over 35 years ago. We're here for only two reasons: to lobby to protect the Second Amendment and to replace anti-gun politicians with pro-gun Americans who actually understand what the Constitution says. I urge you to join us in this fight. We've been called the only no-compromise pro-gun lobby in Washington, D.C. Please go to gunowners.org and join today. It may help you from becoming a victim tomorrow. That's gunowners.org.
Hey, it's Dr. Gina here, and I told you that I'm going to help you be the most effective in your activism that I possibly can, and I've got a tip for you right now. Go to gunowners.org and join to be a member. Sign up for their alerts, and you can know exactly what you need to do to take action to save your freedoms. Go there right now and become a member. Gunowners.org. That's gunowners.org. Tell them Dr. Gina sent you. Gunowners.org.
Hi, this is Mark Stein, author of After America, and even in the midst of total societal collapse, you don't want to miss the Dr. Gina Show. She's great.
Now, I may or may not have a really bad habit of watching a show that usually isn't too virtuous. Actually, though, last season was actually pretty virtuous, I will say. The show is The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, and it is wrong of me to watch this on so many levels. Let me just start with, it's ABC, and ABC does wife swap, and I don't really need to explain that to you. So it's just wrong. Plus, there's stuff on there that's disgusting and vile, and I don't know why I watch it, okay? I'm confessing this to you as my audience who I love, that I have a habit of watching this show. And actually, last night, I had a strong urge to go look at French Bulldogs because I've been wanting to buy a French Bulldog. And instead, I watched Bachelorette. And while I was watching Bachelorette, I saw a story about this, Warrior Princess. Transgendered woman reveals how she served as part of Navy SEAL Team 6. Here is my morbid cure. This is my problem. I'm confessing this, okay? I want you all to know. I have a morbid curiosity about things that are just weird. And I don't think I'm alone, or I don't think Mail Online could survive. And I don't think UK Daily Mail and Entertainment, what are all the shows that are out there? TMZ. I'm not alone. And I really try to stay away from the smut, but once in a while, it's just so fascinating. Like the psychology behind why in the world, how you go from a Navy SEAL to a transgendered, I don't even know what she does now, writes books, trying to make money. Nothing wrong with making money, except maybe if you're exploiting things and confusing people. Kristen Beck was called Chris while she served in the famous Navy SEAL squad, one team of which gained international recognition for being the ones who killed Osama bin Laden. As Chris, Beck served 20 years in SEAL Team 6 and retired just months before that raid on the bin Laden compound. So she was not part, she, I don't know, what do you call it? Next thing you know, aside from the transgendered bathrooms we all have to deal with, which I've already seen and been in, and it's just awkward, we're going to have to come up with a word. Mark my words right here, Jason. You heard it here first. Dr. Gina Radio listening audience, they're going to want to change our word for he and she, him and her. We're going to come up with a gender neutral or something. It's going to sound like a sneeze because when you mix he and she, it sounds like a sneeze. Hushui, hushi. It's going to sound like and everybody's going to be like, bless you. And they'll be like, no, you can't say that either. That invokes biblical images. So you can't say he, you can't say he, she, so you have to say she. And then everyone's going to think you sneeze and they're going to say, bless you. And the thought police are going to come for you, and the IRS is going to target you, and Homeland Security is going to come for your collection of antique guns, and it's just all going to be over. That's what's going to happen. And I'll tell you it's going to happen because it's too confusing to try and say he and she when you're referencing a transgendered American. I'm telling you. During the time in the military, she went on 13 deployments, bless you, thank you, including 7 combat zones, earned both a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star. This ain't no squeamish SEAL, okay? Maybe, and I'm just thinking out loud. Psychological profile here. We're going to go with this. Maybe this SEAL Team 6 member, just maybe, had a need for a lot of attention and an adrenaline addiction. I have an adrenaline addiction. There's no question about that. I go jump off of things because when I'm upset, and everybody who knows me knows this, if I'm really upset about something, I do risky things. Just last weekend. Yes, I was jumping off of platforms in the jungle, hundreds and hundreds of feet in the air. Yes, I was, because I was stressed out. Things are better now. But I do this, and I take up sports that I have absolutely zero expertise in. You know, like I decide that I am a really good parasailer or a really good kiteboarder or an amazing award-winning surfer when really I'm pretty bad at it.
You're all right.
No, I'm really pretty bad at it. And the other thing is that I learned to surf on surfable waves, and the waves behind me aren't really surfable waves, but I will go surf big waves thinking that I know what I'm doing, when I really could be killing myself if I'm having a little. So I'm thinking about this, Kristen, he, she, bless you, Beck. I'm thinking that perhaps he, she has a little problem with adrenaline rush and need for attention. Now, I'm not going to deny that anyone who is in radio or entertainment business of any kind has a need for attention. I don't care how much they deny it, how private they are, and how much ingratiating they do, telling themselves that they don't love the attention. You obviously don't mind it if you're talking on air. You at least don't mind it. So let's go with those 2 places, and let's go ahead. I'm just going to cover for all those who want to go ahead and call me a hypocrite right now, that I probably fit into those 2 categories too. But I promise you, I really, even more so than I know I'm never running for president, I am certainly never going to be transgendered. I am a woman through and through. But this is what I don't get. So she then writes a book, becomes a woman, a full-fledged woman. And I've got to say, I mean, he looks like, he's not like one of those trannies that you see with like the and the big hair and the platform shoes going around all dolled up like they're trying to be Dolly Parton, and it's just not working for them.
Yeah, I mean, you see this guy on the street and you're thinking, you don't even maybe notice.
When he was a guy, he looked like a guy. And when he was a girl, he looked like she looked like a girl. Bless you.
It's actually one heck of a transformation. I'm kind of
She's not beautiful, but she doesn't look like a tranny. I guess that's just what I'm
But you're
trying
saying
to say.
she is.
She. I don't know, Jason. Give me the right word. You explain it, because I know I'm going to get in trouble for this. This is going to qualify me as a homophobe somehow, even though I know a lot of rational gay people who don't want to be equated with transvestites.
ABC already called you that, so
That's
too
true.
late.
So I'm covered. Good. So nobody else out there is going to have a bigger platform to call me homophobe, and I've been called that. So I'm thinking that maybe psychological profile here, she, the warrior princess, Navy SEAL, 20 years, Purple Heart. I'm thinking that just it was kind of a, when you get older and you've been a Navy SEAL and you can't be a Navy SEAL anymore, and you've been part of SEAL Team 6, which is, of course, famous, and you didn't get to be part of the whole Bin Laden raid, and you're not getting a lot of attention. The adrenaline rush is fleeting, but you still have the addiction to the adrenaline. What are you going to do?
Wow.
I'm just asking that question. And I'm thinking about psychological profiles of people who have adrenaline addiction, like me, not denying. What are you going to do? Maybe becoming a trans. That's out there. And there's no doubt that she, bless you, is going to get a lot of attention all over lamestream media for this. She, bless you, thank you, is going to be on Good Morning America. It's going to be on. Is there still a show called Good Morning? I don't even know. I don't watch TV. But they're going to be all over the television, all over print media. Here she is. Her book is going to, hers, bless you, thank you, book is going to still sell really well. And that alone, for an adrenaline junkie, I could cover a lot of bases there. I'm going to suggest I live in a Navy town. I'm proud to live in a Navy town. I'm a Navy SEAL fan. Do a lot of charity events whenever I can with the Navy SEALs. I'm going to make a suggestion for the retiring Navy SEALs who have, I think there's a good chance that many of them have this sort of almost adrenaline addiction that supersedes the normally innate fear of death, right? You just don't go become a Navy SEAL if you're super afraid of death. You just don't. So I think their adrenaline addiction might surpass their own fear of death, which I think in a lot of cases is a good thing. I don't think that fear of death should be our motivating factor. I talk about that a lot in speeches. I think patriots should not fear death and ridicule and all those things. I think we have a time, and it's God's appointed time, and if you really believe that, none of those things should scare you. And you shouldn't be talking all about your death threats in the media, because maybe you should have something better to do, like your work. So if you're feeling a need to become a warrior princess and you're a Navy SEAL about to retire, I'm thinking you take up extreme sports. This is my suggestion. I don't know. Maybe, perhaps the problem is that there aren't extreme sports that are exciting enough after you've already been a Navy SEAL. Maybe that's the whole problem. Maybe we need to come up with more extreme sports. I'm thinking of a wingsuit. I'm thinking of wingsuiting. I'd like to wingsuit. That's what it's called, right, Producer Jason? Wingsuiting? You know, where you fly like a little bat around cliffs? Or the hole diving. I love watching that infinity hole diving where they dive down in the holes as deep they can go, and they're black, and they play that awesome music in the background. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, those are awesome.
Or maybe some sort of vigilante, like Lisa Payne Maker. She's a vigilante of sorts. Maybe they could become a vigilante. That's a good way to get that adrenaline rush. Anyway, I just want to offer my services and my advice to any Navy SEALs who are thinking the next adrenaline rush needs to come from hormones and implants. It doesn't. Coming up, we have Bob Dorigo Jones. He's going to make us laugh. He always does. I can't wait to hear about the next wacky warning label. Stay tuned for more right after this.
God, guns, and gear. The things you need to be a proper conservative these days. Go to the Dr. Gina site at docgtv.com. That's docgtv.com for all of your Patriot gear, including concealed carry handbags, the best t-shirts you'll find anywhere, and even jewelry for that special woman in your life who enjoys her freedoms as well. docgtv.com, docgtv.com. Go there for your Patriot gear. You understand your Second Amendment freedoms, but who is out there with a no-compromise attitude that will defend those Second Amendment rights? Well, I can tell you, gunowners.org. That's gunowners.org. This is Dr. Gina, and I want you to go to that website right now, gunowners.org, and let them know that you want to help them as they continue the only no-compromise gun lobby in Washington, D.C., according to Ron Paul. Gunowners.org. That's gunowners.org. Check them out.
Hi, this is Craig Smith, chairman of Swiss America. Dr. Gina is the gold standard of talk radio.
What you waiting for?
And you are listening to the Dr. Gina Show. It is good to be with you. So much happening on my Facebook page. Feel free to go there. I think the link is actually right beneath where you are likely watching this.
Oh,
at
that's what
TV.
you're doing. You sound distracted.
Okay, I am distracted. This is why. Because there's somebody posted on my Facebook page, I think it was DJ, something about I'm not one to correct you, but, and you know how you can only see the beginning of things that are written on your Facebook page?
Oh, no, and then you're thinking, oh, my gosh, what did I say?
What did I say? And I know one thing I already said wrong. I can't find that. It's not my intent to correct you. Yeah, that's what it starts with, and it is DJ. But I can't find it, and so that's why I'm distracted. But I also need to say that C-SPAN is running the hearings on one of their stations. I stand corrected on that as well. I'm wrong all the time. Difference between me and the lamestream media is I can actually admit it. Difference between me and this president is that I admit it all the time. My next guest, one of my favorites, senior fellow for the Center for America, author of best-selling Remove Child Before Folding. Very important advice. You never want to miss that. 101 of the stupidest, silliest, and wackiest warning labels ever. He is unveiling this year's list of wacky warning labels. He is at Bob Dorigo Jones on Twitter or bobdorigojones.com on the web. One of my all-time favorite guests and my good friend Bob Dorigo Jones. Welcome back to the Dr. Gina Show. How are you?
Hi, Dr. Gina. It's great to be with you again.
Great to have you.
We're going to give your audience a preview of a news release we're announcing tomorrow that will probably get worldwide attention again. Here, as you said, we're in our 16th annual contest, and we've got some of the funniest labels ever.
I mean, you know, it's funny, and at the same time, it's disheartening to realize how loopy our government is, that really they're spending time on this while we have things like Benghazi that they're not spending any time on. It's just concerning.
That's right. Well, that's why I love coming on your shows, because you always cut to the chase and you see the serious side of how we use humor as a hook to get the rest of the media and the mainstream media talking about an issue that really affects everybody in America. When people think about the kind of crazy lawsuits that lead to the wacky warning labels that we feature every year in this contest, these lawsuits cost every man, woman, and child in the United States about $1,800 a year, even if they're never sued.
Amazing. You know, look out, Jon Stewart, because Bob Dorigo Jones is climbing up here. Tell us, what have you got? What's the breaking?
Well, now, since you are in California, I want to mention that our list of 5 finalists in the contest this year has a definite California flavor this year, because
naturally the land of fruits and nuts comes through again.
That's right. Proposition 65 has directly led to 3 of the 5 finalists in our contest this year, and you know, living in California, that you're surrounded by warning labels, and especially these Prop 65 mandated labels.
Oh yes, we are.
So, for instance, last year, a couple years ago, we found a warning label on a fishing lure that says, "Warning: harmful if swallowed."
Yes,
yes. Give me a break.
That's important to know, because we don't want to go around swallowing fishing hooks. You know, once in a while I just get hungry and there's no bacon. And or worse, if someone puts bacon on a fishing hook, then I'm likely to just gobble the whole thing up. So I'm glad they put that warning on there, Bob. I have to disagree with you on that one.
Well, one of the labels this year was found on a package of rubber worms that are used by fishermen, and the warning label on that one says, "Warning, not for human consumption." No matter how hungry you get when you're out there in the boat, I guess.
If they make rubber bacon, though, again, I would have to disagree. I'm just saying it could happen. If it's rubber bacon and it really looks authentic, this could be a problem, so they better keep those warning labels. What else?
Well, they know they could get sued, and here's another example. Now, there's a common indoor extension cord. This is a kind of cord that is used in millions of homes across America. It's a little 6-foot, 12-foot white or brown extension cord. I'm sure your listeners know what I'm talking about. There is a warning label that says, "Caution, wash hands after using." What? I mean, how many people wash their hands after plugging in an extension cord? But because of Proposition 65 that was passed by California voters about, coming up on 3 decades ago, anybody that makes a product in America that has even a trace amount of chemicals that the state of California deems could possibly cause cancer in higher amounts, they have to have a warning on these products. And it's become a problem. Now, these warning labels are funny. Nobody's going to go wash their hands after using an extension cord. But the people, the entrepreneurs, the inventors, the product makers who are getting caught without labels are spending their life savings defending themselves about whether or not they should have to warn somebody about whether you should swallow a fishing lure or wash your hands after using an extension cord.
Well, my bacon addiction and my OCD habit of hand washing incessantly notwithstanding, are there any of these labels that seem to, actually, have any of them gotten smarter, I guess, since you started publishing your list? Have the warning labels gotten any more serious, I guess?
Well, we do notice one change is that some manufacturers have started making labels purposefully funny so that they can get in our contest.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So we've seen 5-gallon pails that are used on a lot of construction sites. It actually says, "Do not use as a helmet."
That's perfect. I love that.
But, our contest is aimed at pointing out how the fear of lawsuits is influencing the writing of warning labels. So we have a good laugh at those warnings. But we focus on the warnings, like, for example, last year on a paper dust mask. You may have remembered this. We were talking about it last year, where it actually says, "Warning, does not supply oxygen."
Very good. Good to know.
Yeah, right. And we, as part of our project this year, we interviewed a guy who invented a great little device. It's called a pooper scooper for kitty litter. It's actually called a Dura Scooper. A guy outside of Chicago, and he had 9 cats and came up with an idea for a clean way, more environmentally friendly way of cleaning the kitty litter. And he wound up selling his product to all the big pet chains across America. Great story about a guy who had been working in a cubicle his whole life, came up with an idea, and really had a great business going. He has now been sued by a lawyer because he didn't have a warning label on his product. And here's a product that had been used not only for its intended purpose, but it was used by the cleanup crews in the Gulf of Mexico to get the tar balls off the beaches. So it was doing so many good things all over America, and now he's afraid that he's going to lose his life savings and the business that he created with home equity loans because he didn't simply have a warning label on a product that had never had any history at all of injuring anybody.
What label was he supposed to have on there, Bob?
It was supposed to be the Prop 65 label, and I learned something new this year after 16 years of doing this contest. I always wondered how these people who had invented products were sued under Prop 65. And Prop 65, the warning usually goes something like this. This product contains chemicals that are known by the state of California to cause cancer, birth defects, or reproductive harm. And people in California see this everywhere. People outside of the state are starting to see it more and more. But he didn't have that on. And the way that the lawyer who sued him, or actually sued the pet stores that sold his product found out about it is they have people going through stores with little handheld devices that can detect trace amounts of chemicals, and when they come up on a product that doesn't have a warning label that registers on their machine, they sue.
Is this which government agency is this the EPA?
No, these are private lawyers working, trying to find any cause to sue, because if they sue somebody, the government has said you can keep a quarter of the judgment for yourself. So they're getting rich off of suing people who are creating jobs, who are the lifeblood of our economy, and who have done nothing wrong other than not put a warning label on a product that thousands or millions of people may use every day without any problem at all.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Well, so is there any chance at any kind of reform, or is this just really getting worse, Bob?
Well, believe it or not, the California legislature and the governor, Jerry Brown, have come out in favor of kind of limiting lawsuits under that Prop 65 law, because there has been so much public pressure on them to do something. There's been so many frivolous lawsuits, so many companies that have been plagued by this. I was told about a guy in the Los Angeles area who not only he's got a coffee shop, but he brews the coffee, but he roasts the coffee, and because part of the roasting process produces some chemical that's safe, but it's chemical that's covered by Prop 65, he could go out of business. So that's why the Assembly and the governor there are trying to do something, but it's extremely hard to amend Prop 65 because it was an initiated law.
Unbelievable. So California is definitely the worst. How do other states rank? Who's the most free state?
For the best for putting the hammer down on people who file frivolous lawsuits.
Yes.
I would have to say some of the leaders are where I am, based here in Michigan. I'm outside of the Detroit area. It's done a good job.
Probably because you're there, and so that's just credit to you, because they're like, uh-oh, Bob Dorigo is going to talk about me. I don't know what'll happen then. What about some of the states we tend to think of as more libertarian, or is there a blue state, red state difference as far as you can tell?
Well, there is a definite conservative liberal, I would say, like Haley Barbour, governor of I think Mississippi. Mm-hmm. They have done a very good job at reforms, because they used to be one of the worst, and they were finding out that the factories that would employ thousands of people were bypassing their state because they were so afraid of being sued. So when he became governor, he took the reins of leadership and passed reforms, and now they're actually attracting a lot of businesses that were bypassing them before, because they know that they can have a stable, predictable legal climate. And that's really all we're talking about. This is the farther you go outside of Washington, the more bipartisan support there is for the kind of reforms that are needed to bring common sense back. Because really what we're talking about is common sense and personal responsibility.
Right.
When we do this contest every year, we'll get news crews from literally all over the world, especially Europe and Asia, because they can't imagine why Americans would put up with frivolous lawsuits like we have, that they never see there. They wonder, why do you need a warning label, for example, like we mentioned on the cover of my book, in reference to a baby stroller that says, remove child before folding.
Yeah.
They can't comprehend why somebody could sue another company for that, or why somebody who's like jogging through Central Park in New York who trips over their shoelaces sues the manufacturer. That's a real lawsuit. Or a guy playing basketball dunks the ball, catches his teeth in the net, and then sues the net maker, claiming that the net maker is responsible for damage that he did to his teeth by catching his teeth in the net. He walked away with $50,000.
It's not funny, but it's funny. I mean, that's the world you live in, is the not funny but funny. I mean, that really is what you do, and you make your whole political point, and it's frankly ingenious. I wish more conservatives would get, and I'm not even labeling you, sorry about that, but I wish more folks who are passionate about certain constitutional ideas, really, because we're talking about constitutional freedoms here and liberties, would get more creative in their approach. And have a sense of humor about themselves, to be able to look at these things in the audacious and ironically funny light that they really are. Tell us where we can get your stuff, and I know we can follow you on Twitter at Bob Dorigo Jones. We've got BobDorigoJones.com is the website, but where can we find your books and all that?
Yes, thank you. Well, my book is available at all the online book retailers like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and I appreciate you asking about that. The contest itself today is sponsored by the Center for America. And the Center for America is a great nonpartisan 501c3 organization that's working to reduce barriers to free enterprise. So we're looking at litigation, we're looking at skilled trades, and all kinds of things that can jumpstart our economy without having to raise taxes or pass bailout packages or stimulus packages, things that are common sense. So they can go to our website at centerforamerica.org and see how maybe if they have a label around their house, because we've had plenty of labels over the years in every different state of the union. Our grand prize is $1,000, and what's going to happen is in a couple of weeks we're going to go on John Stossel's show, and we're going to let his studio audience pick the 3 cash prize winners from these 5.
Very exciting. And John Stossel does some great stuff. I just saw him when I was in New York a couple of weeks back and hung out with him and tried to eat his, was it chocolate pudding or something I was trying to eat? He had something and I was trying to eat it and he didn't share. I just want to let you know that John Stossel would not share his dessert with me. What was it, Jason?
I wasn't there.
I know, but I told you about it. You're supposed to remember for me. And so, Bob, I just have to ask you one more question in parting. 501c3, you did say the magic word. What year did you get that?
That designation it goes back about 6 or 7 years.
Okay.
And we're distinct from a lot of groups that seek the C4 organization status.
Sure.
And a lot of the C4s have really, the conservative ones, the free enterprise ones, have come under a lot of trouble from the IRS, as you well know. And I think we got in before that whole mess started.
All right, all right. And so, folks, to send your contributions, your nominations for the wackiest warning labels, go to bobdorigojones.com. Can we do that?
Yes, you sure can.
All right, awesome. Bob, thank you so much for being with us. God's continued blessings in your important and fun work. I thank you so much for being on the show again.
Thank you, Dr. Gina. Take care.
All right, you too. Now, first, we kill the weakest. I think that's the new Hippocratic oath if you want to be a doctor. I'm not sure. Disabled are targeted for death to save money in Canada, coming soon to a country near you, thanks to our honorary associate producer. I'm going to be telling you all about what is happening there, and you won't believe it. Stay tuned for more right after this on the Dr. Gina Show.
Would you rather be a gun owner or a victim? Hi, I'm Tim Macy from Gun Owners of America. Our Constitution affirms our right to self-defense, including the right to own firearms. Right now in Washington, D.C. and many states around the country, there are radical leftists who'd like to disarm Americans. That's why Gun Owners of America was formed over 35 years ago. We're here for only 2 reasons: to lobby to protect the Second Amendment and to replace anti-gun politicians with pro-gun Americans who actually understand what the Constitution says. I urge you to join us in this fight. We've been called the only no-compromise pro-gun lobby in Washington, D.C. Please go to gunowners.org and join today. It may help you from becoming a victim tomorrow. That's gunowners.org.
God, guns, and gear, the things you need to be a proper conservative these days. Go to the Dr. Gina site at docgtv.com. That's docgtv.com for all of your Patriot gear, including concealed carry handbags, the best T-shirts you'll find anywhere, and even jewelry for that special woman in your life who enjoys her freedoms as well. docgtv.com, docgtv.com. Go there for your Patriot gear. Do you support Obama's universal background check? This is Dr. Gina. I want you to go to gunowners.org right now and answer that important survey question. Gun Owners is the only no-compromise gun lobby in Washington, according to Ron Paul, and many others are finding the value of joining an organization like Gun Owners of America, who's been there and will be there with a no-compromise attitude. Gunowners.org. That's gunowners.org.
This is Dick Morris. If you're diagnosed with liberalism, Dr. Gina will cure you.
This melody was meant for you. Sing along to my stereo. My heart's a stereo. So listen close.
Tweeting again, are we?
Well, I was trying to text you to tell you I want Battle Scars to be a bumper. So I'll just tell you on air.
Okay.
Okay. You're listening to the Dr. Gina Show. You're listening to a conversation that should be taking place not on air. Boy, I love that.
You're texting me, and I'm 10 feet from you.
Through glass. So, now interesting. DJ posted on my Facebook wall that the UK is targeting disabled folks for euthanasia as a cost-saving measure. And it sounds a little crazy until you start reading the quotes and until you start looking at just your own Twitter stream to realize that some of the things that sounded just plumb crazy a year ago are absolutely happening in this country. There's a story by Rebecca Maxwell. And she says that people in the UK are being targeted, disabled folks, to be euthanized based on what she claims is the almighty dollar. While I'm talking about this is never mentioned in this article, but while I'm talking about this, I just want you to look for parallels. I want you to do sort of your own commentary and analysis here without me talking about it. And I want you to think of what I'm going to say about this when I compared the parallels between this story and the whole Gosnell-Karpin situation with the twisting of full-term babies' heads off. Okay? I want you to just think about that. Just put it all in perspective for yourself and come up with your own commentary and analysis. From Do No Harm, Doctors Killing Disabled People. Listen to this. A much more practical motivation exists, and it goes ka-ching. In a land of nationalized healthcare, every worker pays into the system so everybody can access the system. But some people are too weak, too old, or too disabled to work. Yet they still need medical treatment, draining the system of resources without contributing to the pot. No longer does the UK have to be concerned with passing laws that allow physicians to kill those who want to die, says Life News. Things have now deteriorated to the point where physicians in their healthcare system are deciding on their own to kill the medically vulnerable. If you look at the parallels between what happened with Gosnell and Karpin and what you know is happening all over the country in abortion clinics because nobody's paying attention to them because nobody wants to call out Planned Parenthood, except I will every day on this show. And you look at how many doctors are in charge of care that just quietly gets carried out. Just quietly, all of a sudden, there is a lady in a nursing home who dies. And nobody asks a lot of questions, right? You get where this is going. These two parallels at the beginning of life and the end of life should signal to us that we have absolutely, unequivocally compromised our weakest members. Absolutely, unequivocally. According to a government-commissioned study, hospitals in the UK are quite literally killing off disabled citizens because the healthcare workers believe those patients aren't worth treating. But Life News says that it's perhaps even more disturbing, the clandestine method of how some patients are being killed. One mother was a witness to her daughter, Tina, who was purposely delayed treatment and allowed to intake fluids that eventually led to her death. I can tell you, in my own experience, my own grandmother with dementia was mistreated in a hospital with us right there, overdosed on a medication that ultimately led to her death. This happens. This might come as a surprise to many people here in the U.S., but euthanasia is nothing new to our friends in Europe. Ms. Maxwell, in fact, references an alarming admission based on a government study revealing that healthcare system in the UK is killing 24 patients weekly. Check out this article at docgtv.com. We've linked the lifenews.com article there. We are being naive, they say, if we think this isn't already occurring here. We just aren't to the point where we're ready to openly admit it yet. There's something in the American psyche that goes, ooh, I hate to admit this. So we just kind of sweep it under the rug because we're right in line. We're not very far down the line from those spineless, wimpy so-called Christians out there who sit in church pews every week and then say, oh, I don't want to get involved in politics. It's nasty. I don't like it. It's a dirty business. Ms. Maxwell concludes, and just because eugenics have inspired horrific genocides of millions at the hands of Hitler and Sanger doesn't mean the idea is bad. Did you hear that? Do you know what this leads to? Back in a moment with more. Stay tuned. You're listening to The Dr. Gina Show.
Just a few years ago, Gina Loudon was a young, impressionable college student on her way to becoming the pride of her progressive college professors. Late one night, away from the supervision of the college faculty, in a freak accident, she was exposed to an overdose of common-sense conservatism. Since then, she has spent every waking moment unlearning everything she was programmed to believe during her college indoctrination. Join her in her re-education. This is the Dr. Gina Show.
You're coming into my house?
So y'all need to hide your kids, hide your wife.
Go get a real job.
Three-letter word. Jobs. J-O-B-S.
The president and the first lady are kind of like the mom and the dad of the country. And when your dad says something, you listen.
They don't get a pass because they're young and stupid.
16 ounces is the maximum that they would be able to serve in one cup. If you want to order 2 cups at the same time, that's fine. It's your choice.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Where do they come up with this stuff?
This is the Dr. Gina Show.
I own the night and I don't need no help. Gotta be the bitterness, confidence, stuck it going wild, can't handle this pill. Fight for the club, arrogant like yeah. Top right money, so the
And you are listening to the Dr. Gina Show. You know, it's pretty out here today. It's about the first time. I'm still cold because I'm always cold. It's just my nature. But it's pretty. You got a shot of that shit back there? It's really pretty. It's good to be with you. Important election taking place in Missouri today. Congressional election. Jason Smith. Hope everybody's working on that campaign today. Good patriots out there. I want to follow up, and I this is unprofessional. Here's my wacky warning label right here. This is unprofessional, but I'm going to do it anyway because I really wanted to punch this thought through, and I ran out of time in the last segment. But it ties right into what I'm going to talk about next, which is baby boomers killing themselves at an alarming rate. Why? There is a dangerous and growing bias toward the disabled in the U.S., and if you don't believe it, just look at your own Twitter stream. There is a growing narrative out there in the United States that being disabled is worse than life itself. And if you don't believe it, just look at the statistics on killing precious babies with Down syndrome. When our culture is being indoctrinated, says Life News, by an aggressive death mentality, which it is, believing that killing our weakest human beings is an act of compassion, you know where this leads. Now, Ms. Maxwell sarcastically concludes, and just because eugenics have inspired horrific genocides of millions at the hands of Adolf Hitler and Margaret Sanger doesn't mean the idea is bad. They just got carried away. We should give it another chance after all. We're enlightened now. And you know, practice makes perfect. Well, let me tell you, if practice makes the perfect culture of death, I mean, I wrote about this in my column called, I was last weekend, my column for WorldNet Daily, called American Psychosis, I think it was called. How we have created a culture of death that is, we can no longer separate ourselves. Do you understand this, Americans? We can no longer separate ourselves from the culture of death in pre-Nazi Germany, just pre-Nazi Germany. We are literally teetering on that cliff. Do you get that mentally we are prepared to invite in our own Hitler? Call me crazy. Only paranoid if they're not really out to get you. They're really out to get you. When we are aborting our little babies with Down syndrome, selectively, eugenically deciding who can live and die at the beginning and end of life, those most weakest who were supposed to be protected by the Constitution and the government of the United States. And they are the ones being expended. You can absolutely know we are there. I'm not saying we're getting there. I'm saying we are there. And I am saying that future generations will look back at this time in America and shake their heads and say, well, we're never going to be like that. We are never going to hold a Holocaust on our own citizens. That's what you're doing today, America. And it gets even deeper. Before I get to this story, I want to remind you, I have Jack Miner on the show today. He's a former pastor and Marine who served under President Reagan. He's a contributing writer to WorldNet Daily and a Christian book editor for Affordable Christian Editing. He is the guy that I was talking about yesterday that was in the news for saying he is the thing the IRS fears most. That is that he feels like he can prove by looking down the barrel of the gun of the IRS, he feels like he can prove that they have a lot to hide. And the reason they're not coming after him is because they don't want the exposure and the court cases that will ensue if he comes after them, and he thinks they're scared. So we're going to talk to him about that. The Washington Post today reports that last spring, Frank Turnkele tried to kill himself. He was a retiree in a Pittsburgh suburb, living on disability checks, estranged from friends and family, because that's what happens when you live on disability. Don't ever take government handouts. I don't care how vulnerable and weak you are. Find a private charity. Don't ever take government handouts. That's lesson number 1 about why baby boomers are dying. And you're next if you're taking government handouts. He was estranged from friends and family, mired in credit card debt, taking medication for depression, cholesterol, diabetes, and high blood pressure. How many baby boomers fit in this category right now? How tempting is it? You don't have to admire my parents, strong entrepreneurs, not a day dependent on the system in their entire lives, despite the fact that the government has made their life a living hell with bureaucratic red tape. My parents fell into that category that said, and they're baby boomers, that fell into that category that said that insurance is really hard to get because you have pre-existing conditions, so you don't fit into groups. So just go ahead and become dependent. Why not? Just go ahead and collect a disability. They both could qualify, and yet they don't. And I would submit to you, if Frank Turnkele had not fallen prey to the temptation of a free check from the government and to medication for depression handed out because he was labeled in groups, just like I warned about this Sunday in my column at WorldNet Daily, then I would submit to you that the suicidal thoughts would never have come. He would be in a different place in his life. It might have been more work, but he would have been a stronger person for it. This wasn't the life he'd envisioned as a young man in the 60s and 70s, when people were more in tune with one another. People were more prone to help one another. He was 63 years old. He owned a camera shop and later worked at Sears. And he says, there wasn't this big segregation between the poor and the rich. I thought it was going to continue the same. I didn't think it was going to change. One of the first mistaken notions of most of Americans today. What we enjoy, the freedoms we enjoy, the things, the material comforts we enjoy won't change. They'll stay the same. He attempted to overdose on tranquilizers, and he says that's because he felt alone. Let me tell you, this is the second thing wrong with government help. Before we had welfare systems, we understood this principle, and it goes very simply, that when people are in need, they can go to family, friends, neighbors, churches, and charity. All real charity has one thing in common with it. It is voluntary. Government programs are not charity because they are not voluntary. We are forcibly taxed. That is a different thing. So you take the power away from the private charity, the family, the church, the neighborhood, the congregation. You take the power away from them to look that human being in the eye and say, I want to help you. How can I help you? I'm going to hold you accountable, but I want to help you. And you give them a government check. They become a number. Nobody's looking at them. No one cares. No one cared that day that Frank Turncalais and millions like him were isolated. No one cared. Why? Because he'd become dependent on government. He'd fallen away from friends, family, church, charity, neighborhood. And conservatives have seen this for a long time and been warning about it. I've talked about it on this show probably hundreds of times. Their suicides, baby boomers, that is, shot up precipitously between 1999 and 2010. It has long held true that elderly people have higher suicide rates than the overall population. And I'll tell you this, San Diego, we have more suicides, I believe, in San Diego than most American cities in the country. We have one a day, suicide a day here in San Diego. We have a lot of retired military. We have a lot of baby boomers. We have a lot of retirees, period, who find themselves alone and isolated in the land of milk and honey, this beautiful, beautiful. You know, my pastor says he believes it was the original Garden of Eden because it's so beautiful here in Southern California. Why do people kill themselves? To the tune of one a day. Numbers released in May, according to the Washington Post by the CDC, show a dramatic spike in suicides among middle-aged people, with the highest increases among men in their 50s, whose rates went up, get this, nearly 50%. 30 in 100,000 men in their 50s will kill themselves successfully. This is not attempts, this is actual suicides. In women in their early 60s, their rates rose by nearly 60%, though still relatively low compared with men, 7 in 100,000. Highest rates were among white and Native American and Alaskan men. Death by suicide has surpassed deaths by motor vehicle crashes. You are in a higher danger of suicide than you are in danger of dying in a car accident. And I've talked about this many times on the show. I started my psychological portion of my career doing suicide, life crisis prevention, doing suicide intervention. So I'm very familiar with the risk factors. Men much more likely to commit suicide. And I'll tell you, just in my own anecdotal experience, I have friends often, most of my friends these days are on antidepressants, though I try to talk them out of it, call me and say they're going to kill themselves, and I want to be there for them, and I am there for them. But when a guy friend of mine calls and tells me he's having thoughts of suicide, I ask them, do you have a plan? And if they have a plan, I intervene. Because men mean it when they say that. And sometimes when they don't say it. As youths, boomers had higher suicide rates than earlier generations. The confluence of that with the fact that they are now beginning to grow old, when the risk traditionally goes up among all people. And this has experts worried, as it should. There's no good way to address these high-risk individuals as they come into all of the risk factors. You know, post-traumatic stress disorder, use of antidepressants, risk factor, men, risk factor, age, risk factor. I would say socially dependent on government welfare, big risk factor because it isolates you. Youth-oriented. Yeah, that was good. Youth-oriented. There is actually a word, orientation. Orientated. There's also a word, orientated. It's when you've past tense been oriented. But that's not what I'm talking about here. The youth-oriented culture is another part of the problem. Bob Knight is a professor of gerontology and psychology at University of Southern California who is also a baby boomer.
Wow, there is an actual word, orientated.
There is an actual word, orientated. Yeah, but you almost never use it unless you've been through an orientation and you've been orientated. Otherwise, it's oriented, and it's a big pet peeve of mine that
I'm sorry, I have to admit, I just doubted you.
Really? Don't do it again. Bad mistake. We haven't idealized growing up and getting mature in the same way that other cohorts have. Remember when we respected wisdom? The youth today, we've always said, the youth today, they're so bad. They think they're so great. They do think they're so great. But you know what's worse than that? So do we. We have lost the wisdom of the ages. And that's why whenever I have a chance for my kids to cuddle up around some grandma or grandpa who has stories to tell, we do it. And I tell my kids, you shut your mouth, you fix your eyes on that person, and you listen, because there is wisdom there. Draw it out. Find it. There was a sense of rebelliousness in, of course, the 60s. America seemed like a promise of a limitless array of possibilities. The Great Depression and World War II were over. Medical innovations such as polio vaccine and other antibiotics wiped out disease and disability. Birth control pills sparked a sexual revolution. The economy was thriving, and as they came of age, boomers embraced a new way of living. They were civil rights activists. They were hippies. They were feminists. They were war protesters. They didn't want to be their parents. Remember that? This all makes sense to me. There was this illusion of choice where people thought they'd be able to recreate themselves again and again. And it hasn't worked out so well. And they've gotten their disability checks and their welfare checks, and they've realized that they have nothing else. And this is the poison that our government is doling out. And then you have the mental health professions doling out antidepressants, exacerbating the problem. And I'm telling you what, watch for these risk factors in your friends. If you're a boomer, or if you're a child of a boomer, watch for these risk factors. And it is up to this generation, young people listening to this, it is up to this generation to change the dependency that is leading to the suicide rate surpassing car accidents in the lives of our people today. If you love your parents, get them off of welfare. We will be back in a moment. We have Jack Miner coming up, former pastor and Marine, who says he is the most feared individual in America by the IRS. We're going to talk to him. Stay tuned for more right after this.
Hi, I'd like to report a bear sighting in the forest. 1 second, I'm having a smoke. Next thing I know, I'm face-to-face with Smokey Bear. Wow. And he told me it only takes one spark to start a wildfire.
Did you know 9 out of 10 wildfires are caused by humans?
I had no idea.
That's why Smokey's famous and you're not. If you see someone in danger of starting a wildfire, step in and make a difference. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council. Learn more at SmokeyBear.com.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
God, guns, and gear. The things you need to be a proper conservative these days. Go to the Dr. Gina site at docgtv.com. That's docgtv.com for all of your Patriot gear, including concealed carry handbags, the best t-shirts you'll find anywhere, and even jewelry for that special woman in your life who enjoys her freedoms as well. docgtv.com, docgtv.com. Go there for your Patriot gear.
Would you rather be a gun owner or a victim? Hi, I'm Tim Macy from Gun Owners of America. Our Constitution affirms our right to self-defense, including the right to own firearms. Right now in Washington, D.C. and many states around the country, there are radical leftists who'd like to disarm Americans. That's why Gun Owners of America was formed over 35 years ago. We're here for only 2 reasons: to lobby to protect the Second Amendment and to replace anti-gun politicians with pro-gun Americans who actually understand what the Constitution says. I urge you to join us in this fight. We've been called the only no-compromise pro-gun lobby in Washington, D.C. Please go to gunowners.org and join today. It may help you from becoming a victim tomorrow. That's gunowners.org.
Hey, it's Dr. Gina here, and I told you that I'm going to help you be the most effective in your activism that I possibly can, and I've got a tip for you right now. Go to gunowners.org and join to be a member. Sign up for their alerts, and you can know exactly what you need to do to take action to save your freedoms. Go there right now and become a member. Gunowners.org. That's gunowners.org. Tell them Dr. Gina sent you. Gunowners.org.
Hey, I heard you are a wild one. Ooh. Hey, I heard you are a wild one. Show me how you do. I wanna shut down the club with you. Hey, I heard you are a wild one. Ooh.
How about that carrier? Producer Jason put up there on the break. Pretty cool. I love seeing our military flex its military might. Muscle. Cool. Love it. Love to see that on horizon. Oh, I get to see it almost every day here in San Diego. You look out, there's almost always a carrier, something going on out there. Very cool. So the IRS hearings this morning, honestly, between McDermott and Lewis, I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed to look at these humble patriots sitting there, pouring their hearts out, fighting back tears, talking about what their passions are, how much they personally have invested in their love of country, and hearing McDermott and Lewis toss it aside as if it's some sort of political plot, as if this is all about partisanship. Absolutely embarrassing. And all the while this is going on, right? All the while this is going on, the IRS is exempting terror front groups over Tea parties. You can read about that in WorldNet Daily if you don't believe me. That's the title, IRS exempts terror front group over Tea Party. You can also check it out at docgtv.com. We have it linked for you. Also, new IRS boss, same Stonewall controversy going on within the IRS. Also, Lois Lerner targeted Dick Durbin's Senate opponent. Scandal going on right now. Also, IRS officials enjoying luxury rooms at a $4 million conference going on also. I mean, what in the world? Are you kidding me? So here are the clips. These amazing patriots. Jason, do we have any of the testimony of the Wetumpka Tea Party leader, Becky?
You know, I was not able to
Garrettson?
capture any of that. I'm sorry.
Okay, no worries. So we don't have that, but it would just suffice it to say I was crying watching it. I was crying watching all of them because you know what? I've been down in the ground. I've been in the trenches with these leaders who just believe what they believe and are passionately working, pouring their own resources into this, time and money and grit. They are the ones with the dust on their face and the blood who have fought. And I submit to you that if I have anything to say about it, it is the Becky Garrisons of the world that will go down in history and not the Jim McDermotts and the John Lewises. Let me just assure you, the real heroes here. So after all of this testimony is put forth, this is what Representative Jim McDermott had to say about it.
The mistake here was that the staff organizing the organizations used the names of the organizations rather than the work they do and asked improper questions to figure that out. It's clearly wrong. It was inept, stupid, and a whole lot of other things. But let's not get lost. During the Bush administration, liberal groups were targeted without any concern by Mr. Issa or anyone else on this committee. The Republicans were looking for a conspiracy where there isn't one. Mr. Issa says he can feel it in his gut that someone's broken the law. Now, you just ask yourself which is more likely, that a mid-level employee is overwhelmed by 4 times as many applications as before, made stupid, irresponsible shortcuts, or that there's an administration-wide plot to take down community organizers. Let's not forget, this happened under an IRS commissioner appointed by George Bush and was investigated by a Republican inspector general. What happened to you was unfair. It was unfair and incredibly inconvenient, but it was a mistake. Our job is to make sure it never happens again. I haven't heard a single word here about what questions you think we ought to be able to ask you about your tax-exempt requests. Anything else, like the circus that's happening in the Oversight Committee or here, is simply political theater. It is diverting attention from what we ought to be doing on this committee, is rewriting the law if it's wrong.
And here is what Paul Ryan had to say to that.
I'm going to deviate from my original question in response to what I just heard.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Well, welcome to Washington.
The committee will be in order. Ryan has the time.
We heard Gingrich. We heard Bush.
Mr. Chairman.
We had the former IRS Commissioner Schulman, who knew about the political targeting long before Congress was told, since implied that the organizations were responsible for the targeting because they chose to apply for tax-exempt status. So you're to blame, I guess, is the message here. Do you think that you were targeted based upon your political beliefs, your religious beliefs, or just because you chose to apply?
Our beliefs, our views.
And you are listening to the Dr. Gina Show. I can't say it more perfectly than they did. Next up, Jack Miner tells us who the IRS really fears. Stay tuned for this.
God, guns, and gear. The things you need to be a proper conservative these days. Go to the Dr. Gina site at docgtv.com. That's docgtv.com for all of your Patriot gear, including concealed carry handbags, the best t-shirts you'll find anywhere, and even jewelry for that special woman in your life who enjoys her freedoms as well. docgtv.com, docgtv.com. Go there for your Patriot gear.
You understand your Second Amendment freedoms, but who is out there with a no-compromise attitude that will defend those Second Amendment rights? Well, I can tell you, gunowners.org. That's gunowners.org. This is Dr. Gina, and I want you to go to that website right now, gunowners.org, and let them know that you want to help them as they continue the only no-compromise gun lobby in Washington, D.C., according to Ron Paul. Gunowners.org. That's gunowners.org. Check them out.
This is Fingers Malloy of FTRradio.com. Listen to the Dr. Gina Show, or the baby seal gets it.
And now I'm calling out your name.
And you are listening to the Dr. Gina Show. I have to tell you, in response to our segment with Bob Dorigo Jones, a friend of mine, Robert, just let me know there is a bacon Band-Aid that I should not eat, but I can laugh at, and it does not have a warning label. So there are probably people out there eating bacon Band-Aids, and Robert has let me know that, and I appreciate it. And I'm sure that we're going to get right back on that topic of making sure that there are warning labels on Band-Aids made to look like bacon because some idiot might eat them. Well, are you afraid of the IRS? Wouldn't you like to know how to make the IRS afraid of you? My next guest, Jack Miner, wrote a story about this yesterday, I believe it was, in the World Net Daily, and I read it and I said, get him on this show. He is a former pastor and Marine who served under President Reagan, contributing writer for World Net Daily, and a Christian book editor for Affordable Christian Editing. Welcome for the first time, I believe, to the Dr. Gina Show, Jack Miner.
Thank you.
Good to have you. And I appreciated your story. I appreciate a lot of your stories. I always comb through World Net Daily in the morning, of course, for show prep. This is interesting. Jeff Mayer, a Colorado chiropractor, has engaged in a number of business ventures and admits that he has refused to file federal income tax returns since 2002, but says the IRS is afraid to press criminal charges against him. Why?
Well, it's because he has actually got a paper trail that would kind of limit their ability to get a criminal charge against him. Because one thing is, in order to get a criminal conviction, typically they have to prove that not only did the person refuse to pay taxes, but that they knew they should have paid the taxes and they simply didn't. He's got a paper trail proving that he has continuously asked the IRS to provide the documentation for why wages are considered income, and they have not answered that. If they were to go after him criminally, he would be able to enter that into court as his reasons for not paying it. And they don't want that information, obviously, put in any kind of official record.
So he's asserting that the IRS doesn't want it put into record. Essentially, what I believe I'm reading here, if you can help me, is that if citizens understood that as long as they are asking questions and don't believe they are legally bound to pay their taxes, as long as there's a paper trail of that evidence, people can get away without paying taxes. So this is really what he's doing is outlining the difference between himself, a questioner, I would maybe label him, and that of a tax protester, because he says he's not a tax protester, correct?
That's correct. He has gone on record. He told me, I have no problem paying any tax I'm owed. However, before I pay it, I want to know that I legally am required to pay this. And he's simply asking for the statute that says wages are considered income.
This is interesting because this reminds me a whole lot of the REAL organization. I don't know if you're a part of it. I know you are a former pastor. You may know about it. My pastor, in fact, the way I chose him was because he chairs the REAL organization, which is an acronym that is for an organization that believes that they will talk politics from the pulpit because they believe they don't forfeit the right to their First Amendment when they are ordained as pastors. And so they talk about it and they dare the IRS to come for them because they say if the IRS did come for them and it did go to court, they would win, and the IRS knows it, so the IRS won't ever come for them. And guess what? Out of the thousands of pastors that participate in this talking politics directly from the pulpit, regardless of party affiliation or denomination, the IRS has not come for one, which you have to find pretty interesting. This reminds me of that. Is this sort of similar in a way that some citizens are saying, hey, this is unfair what you're doing, and we'll use your own processes against you, and so you're exposed?
I think it's definitely similar. I was the same way when I was a pastor. I had no problem preaching politics in the pulpit. Of course, Bush was in office then, but I recall a July 4th sermon where I blasted President Bush in the pulpit because there was some news about how he had approved like a $100,000 budget to approve a gay outreach, and I said, how dare our Christian president do this? Anyway, the point is, I wasn't afraid to do that, but I think you're exactly right as far as they don't want to tackle it because they know it's a house of sand. Likewise, they would be terrified, and I would be too if I was them, about the possibility of, if wages are truly not considered income for purposes of law, think about what that means for every single American that's been paying taxes all these years on their wages.
And just to clarify, and a little disclaimer here for you as the writer of this article for WorldNet Daily, I'll go ahead and make it because I know they want me to, and for my own show, no one here is advocating not paying your taxes. I'm not even sure that's what Jeff Mayer is saying in this particular situation. I think what he's talking about is the bureaucratic inconsistency in the IRS, that they refuse to answer and be held accountable. There's zero transparency going on here. They don't feel a need to explain themselves, and as such, he's sort of exploited that, it sounds like, in a way that is so far anyway keeping him from being prosecuted in any way. But there is a difference, though, and you write about this. Wesley Snipes, for example, high-profile actor, charges were pressed against him. What is the difference here?
Well, I think one of the differences, again, is Mayer has gone on record, saying he's willing to pay the tax, but he simply wants the documentation as to proving that he is required to pay the tax. That's a whole lot different than simply saying, I don't want to pay the tax just because.
Right. Right. Because I have two sets of friends. One is actually in case law, and he always jokes that when his kids go to law school, one of the case laws that their professors always bring up is his own case of not paying taxes, which would be funny when you're sitting there in the classroom and your dad's case, the IRS suing your dad, is brought up in case law. But I do have two friends who have been prosecuted for not paying their taxes, for being protesters, tax protesters, if you will, and from that, I just figure it's easier for me to just pay them. But really, what he's saying here is goes deeper really than protesting taxes, doesn't it? This is really about exposing the inconsistencies and the lack of transparency in this government agency.
Oh, absolutely. And it kind of goes back to other issues Robert Daly has covered. And for example, take the birth certificate issue. It's the same idea, and that is, if it's so easy, if it's a given that, well, of course wages are income, everybody knows that, which is basically what the courts are saying, which is why they throw these cases out as frivolous. Well, if it's that much of a slam dunk, why can't you produce the law?
That's it. Why can't they reproduce the law? I just don't understand that at all. And has there been any word since you've written this article? Have you had any further follow-up or any response from Mr. Mayer that he's heard from the IRS or anyone involved?
At this point, I haven't heard anything negative from it. Of course, obviously the article's only been up for a couple of days. But again, it is interesting. What happened is, in the story is, he stopped filing taxes in 2002. Now, in 2006, the IRS basically went through all of his personal records, his mortgage company, his PayPal account, and so forth. And based on that, they assessed what they felt his income was. And based on that, they, basically sent him a bill. But what was fascinating to me was when I talked to him, I said, "No, wait a minute, that was 2006?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Well, what about 2007 through 2011? Have they even, obviously they know who you are." He says, "No, they haven't even said anything to me about." So as far as they're concerned, it's almost like he has no income.
That is so fascinating. And for those of us who are watching this whole thing down with the IRS, we want it gone. We all want it gone. And we think probably most of us out here can agree that fair tax, flat tax, something like that would be a much better, more straightforward system. But in this particular case, Mayer says that the news is all focused on IRS targeting of conservative groups, but we are missing a golden opportunity, he says, because he says that this is a much bigger issue against the IRS than the targeting. Explain why.
Well, it goes back to the idea of, if it is determined that he is correct, your father, who paid income taxes based on their wages all these years, have now given money to the government that they weren't legally required to give.
Right.
Think about how many trillions of dollars that would be.
Yeah.
And then it gets into the issue of, well, will they be entitled to that money back because it wasn't paid correctly? I mean, that becomes a whole big quagmire that I don't even want to imagine. That would be obviously be a whole other issue, be tied up in the courts for years, but the whole system would come crumbling down if all of a sudden people in our voluntary tax system, which they call voluntary, but if our so-called voluntary tax system was suddenly revealed, I've been lied to as far as what I was voluntarily paying you all these years, that would just totally destroy everybody's faith in the system, even more so than it already has been.
What is to prevent a group of citizens who've been paying these taxes for however many years from forming a class action lawsuit against the IRS based on these claims?
That's a good question. Obviously, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't say to that, but I think it would definitely be something worth trying.
Well, I've got a brilliant idea here. Are you ready for this? Maybe you and I can make this happen, Jack. I suggest that we take these lawyers making these crazy, frivolous cases against these entrepreneurs out there and making it so Americans can't even get access to products they should have because of the wacky warning label problem that Bob Dorigo Jones warned us about in our third segment today. And we direct all of those lawyers to a class action suit against the IRS for taking taxes that they weren't entitled to and can't explain. You think that's a good? Are you with me?
I would love it. For one thing, either way, it would force them to, as my grandpa used to always say, fish or cut bait.
Yeah. I could see them, like little cockroaches scattering back into their dark holes, because I don't know how they could possibly fight something like that. This promises to get more interesting, and I know folks will want to follow you. His name is Jack Miner. He writes for WorldNet Daily, and it's good to have you on this show, Jack. Thank you so much for your investigative piece on this and for the work that I know you'll continue to do on this to keep Americans informed.
Thank you, Dr. Gina. I appreciate it.
All right. All the best to you. There is good news for bacon lovers, and it will shock you. Stay tuned for the next segment of the Dr. Gina Show.
Would you rather be a gun owner or a victim? Hi, I'm Tim Macy from Gun Owners of America. Our Constitution affirms our right to self-defense, including the right to own firearms. Right now in Washington, D.C. and many states around the country, there are radical leftists who'd like to disarm Americans. That's why Gun Owners of America was formed over 35 years ago. We're here for only two reasons: to lobby to protect the Second Amendment and to replace anti-gun politicians with pro-gun Americans who actually understand what the Constitution says. I urge you to join us in this fight. We've been called the only no-compromise pro-gun lobby in Washington, D.C. Please go to gunowners.org and join today. It may help you from becoming a victim tomorrow. That's gunowners.org.
God, guns, and gear, the things you need to be a proper conservative these days. Go to the Dr. Gina site at docgtv.com. That's docgtv.com for all of your Patriot gear, including concealed carry handbags, the best t-shirts you'll find anywhere, and even jewelry for that special woman in your life who enjoys her freedoms as well. docgtv.com, docgtv.com. Go there for your Patriot gear. Do you support Obama's universal background check? This is Dr. Gina. I want you to go to gunowners.org right now and answer that important survey question. Gun Owners is the only no-compromise gun lobby in Washington, according to Ron Paul, and many others are finding the value of joining an organization like Gun Owners of America, who's been there and will be there with a no-compromise attitude. Gunowners.org. That's gunowners.org.
You're a troublemaker, troublemaker. You ain't nothing but a troublemaker, girl.
This is Andrew Breitbart of Breitbart.com and Big Government. Troublemaker, just like my longtime friend, Dr. Gina, Tea Party Patriot. You're listening to the Dr. Gina Show.
Oh, troublemaker, yeah, that's your middle name. Oh, I know you know it, but you're stuck in my brain. Troublemaker.
Well, you are listening to the Dr. Gina Show, continuing to make trouble. I might or might not have contacted an attorney on the break. Just curious how that might work if we were to contemplate. Interesting. I'm going to get to this bacon story because I know you're dying to hear about bacon. Bacon makes everything better. And I've got big news on bacon that you're going to want to know. Big news on bacon. But I do want to get to this piece. You've got to hear this because these people take themselves seriously. Like they think they are contributing to our republic. Listen to the words in the testimony this morning. The IRS testimony after these amazing patriots have laid their hearts wide open, their wallets wide open, and all they're asking for is a fair shake like the rest of the groups asking for 501c status have achieved. And here is Representative John Lewis's response to them.
Since the days of the Bush administration,
Bush,
with very political leanings,
let's blame
have been
Bush.
Scrutinized. Every single person in this room knows this. We must be honest with ourselves and with each other.
And with.
This has nothing to do with red versus blue.
What?
In fact, for the past 10 years, all of the IRS commissioners have been Republican appointees appointed by President George Bush.
Blame Bush.
Between 2004 and 2006, many liberal groups, including the NAACP, a progressive church, and an environmental group were targeted by the Bush administration. Where was the outrage then?
Blame Bush. Did he say anything else? Just blame Bush. Blame Bush. All those commissioners.
Oh my gosh, that is ridiculous.
I mean, first of all, it may be, I really want to leave out the possibility that the man has had a stroke, because if he has, I feel bad. Because, you know, I have friends that have had strokes and can't talk very well, and maybe that's the issue, but is there an attempt there? If all you can say, if the only words you can utter ever in your own defense are blame Bush, it's a mental disability. It's not a speech disability. It's not resulting, well, it might be resulting from a stroke. Maybe that's the whole problem. Maybe he should recuse himself from his responsibilities if he can't talk and can only ever utter the words blame Bush. But here's the good news. I know Jason's going to want to know. You know, the whole show, we have fights about food, basically. Jason and I, on the breaks, we fight about food because he tries to take food away from me, and I try to eat food that I like, and I try to drink drinks that I like, and I happen to like cream in my coffee, which Jason thinks is like the mark of the beast. You drink cream in your coffee. And so I have my coffee, and I'm trying to drink it, and Jason comes and steals it while I'm on air. What kind of a producer comes and distracts his show host? Because his priority...
Because I have almond milk ready for you.
I don't like almond milk in my coffee. It's fine on its own, but I don't like it in my coffee. It makes it taste like cardboard, producer Jason. It's not good, and I don't want it. And I want my bacon every day, and I want my mayonnaise, and I'm tired of you trying to take them away. So, we have good news for our bacon lovers out there. Bacon lovers, unite, because we are a continually, increasingly persecuted group of just loving people who just want to love. We love to love, and we love to love bacon. Even as fast food chains tout their ridiculously healthy offerings, they're also coming up with fatty new treats to keep customers interested, like you and me. Dunkin' Donuts is adding a donut breakfast sandwich to its menu. Yes, they are. Now, I will say this. Producer Jason loves a chain called Denny's. I think he loves a chain called Denny's because I think Denny's is the only chain in the world that will let him sit there for 25 hours in a row using their Wi-Fi while he drinks one 25-cent cup of coffee. Is that pretty much in a synopsis why you love Denny's?
Yeah, you got it.
So he always tries to make me go to Denny's, like to have like meetings and stuff like this. I can't stand Denny's. I'm sorry. For me, atmosphere, I don't need a white tablecloth, but I need something more than Denny's offers until they came out with their bacon milkshake. They have an entire bacon dessert menu. And I have to praise them for that because I love it. And so my daughter was given an award the other night, and Jason thought the whole thing was hilarious because the Lions Club International, who decided to give her the award, decided to have the ceremony at a Denny's. And Jason knew I was going to be exposed to their bacon menu, which I was. And I have to tell you, my extreme feelings of I'll never go to Denny's have dissipated slightly.
It's just I'll probably never go to Denny's.
Now it's I'll go to Denny's if they're giving my daughter an award. Because they do have bacon items on their menu. So that's just one update. But this is the cool thing about the Dunkin' Donuts. What's that Baconzilla that sandwich that they have too? Somebody has a Baconzilla sandwich. Who is that? Rally's, right? Is it Rally's?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Oh, haven't lived until you've had the Baconzilla. Now what we need is creamer to go in coffee that is maple bacon flavored creamer for your coffee. That's what we need. I will say this, though, about producer Jason. Well, he goes off and he has his little health tangents and he tries to tell me how to eat and how to drink and how to live. He does buy me bacon, chocolate-covered bacon, so I have to give him some forgiveness.
Yes, when I go to Whole Foods, they do happen to sell chocolate-covered bacon.
And Jason lurks in Whole Foods, and he hits on women in Whole Foods wine section, and it's really embarrassing.
Well, they're easier to, they like me a little bit more after they've tasted a few wines.
Oh, I see. That's why you always go to the wine section to hit on the women, and I just watch and laugh. And anyway, that's my entertainment for the evening. And then he buys me a bacon, chocolate-covered bacon bar, and he goes on a date, and I go home and eat my chocolate bacon bar. But anyway, Dunkin' Donuts tested their new sandwich in select stores in eastern Massachusetts, and this is what they found. The Dunkin' Donuts sandwich, bacon sandwich, clocks in at 360 calories. Listen, that's not bad. I might have to start eating these. It is less calories than the 390 calories for the turkey sausage sandwich. Turkey sausage. Now, you probably think the turkey sausage sandwich is healthier than the bacon sandwich, but the bacon sandwich is healthier than the turkey sandwich. And I never did like turkey except for Thanksgiving anyway. So there.
All right then.
All right then. So I'm very excited about this new Dunkin' Donuts bacon donut. I mean, it can't get much more better. See, here I go. See, when I get this excited, I start making serious grammatical errors. It can't get much more better than that glazed donut with some bacon on it. That's right. Except maybe fried pickles from Alabama. Remember Hamburger Heaven's fried pickles with the orange sauce? Those are really good. So
yes,
I'm dying to tell my audience, of course, about my new venture, but I can't tell you. But we have some really exciting news coming, and it might or might not have a lot to do with food. You knew this day was coming. You knew I couldn't stay political and psychological forever. You knew at some point I had to divert into the realm that I really know and love, and that is food. And with all my opinions.
Are you becoming a taste tester?
Ooh, I would love to become a taste tester. What's the fancy word for a wine tester? There's a word for it. A wine taster?
Tasteologist? I don't know.
No, it's a cool. It's not sommelier. Sommelier is the one that is the one who knows the wine and brings it to. But there's a special word for a wine taster. I could be one of those. I could be a cheese. I could be a bacon taster. I could be the world's first. We could come up with a word, like an academic sounding word, that meant specifically a bacon taster. I could be that girl. I could go taste all products involving bacon, especially bacon flavored wine, which is my all-time favorite. Anyway, so there is an increased effort by restaurants to get healthier. And it's just going to be interesting to watch how many of those new healthy menus include the real healthy item that is bacon. We all know it.
Oh my gosh, I cannot believe you're even saying that.
And the funny part is, he hands me a note that we have the Becky Garrettson testimony, and he wanted me to play that, but I talked about bacon.
I work so hard.
Oh, bother. He works so hard to keep my bacon from me. That's what he works hard at. But I have a plan. I've been scheming. I have a plan coming soon to a Dr. Gina show near you. You're going to want to hear it. So don't forget to tune in tomorrow to the Dr. Gina show, because you can see that beach behind me. I'm going to go keep an eye on that carrier ship by laying on the beach and getting a tan in my bikini. This is what I want you to do. You go boldly now and live the truth. See you tomorrow.